Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here, and we will be speaking about an intriguing and, as we try often, an unconventional topic, the Kabbalah of wine, the mystique and power of this intoxicating drink. Now, I know some of you don't like wine, some of you do like wine, but I believe that this discussion will be relevant to everybody. Wine is perhaps the oldest, if one of not the oldest, and popular drinks in human history. Goes back to the beginning of time, and it's very much, till this very day, very much part of our culture, part of our social culture, whether it's cuisine and culinary arts, whether it's wine tasting, whether it's wine collection, vintages. There are dozens of magazines just about wine for wine enthusiasts. And in general, it's just an ongoing part of the culture in the sense that people see it as a class and distinction, and it's prevalent. Now, when anything is so popular by human beings, there always has to be some deeper understanding of the psychological, spiritual, and even mystical meaning, which is what we'll be talking about. So the question, of course, is what makes this? What exactly is the mystery behind this drink? Is it just its intoxicating ability? And the popularity of it actually far outshines even the fruit from where wine is made, which are grapes. As popular as grapes are, wine is far more an industry. And the wine industry actually has many industries in it. There's the producers of wine, there's the storers of wine, there is the distribution of wine, there's the experts on wine. So it's really a very diverse and a pretty very much part of our lives, and yet the question is what makes it so compelling? What is it about it that gives it its this allure, this mystique? That's what we shall be talking about. Now, as I said, you may wonder how could something so material, something so physical, have any deeper meaning? But as some of you have heard me speak before and know a popular theme, which is, and I'll just use an example from physics and from science, that nothing is as it appears. When we talk about any item, in this case wine, what we see what the naked eye sees, what we experience on the sensory level, there's always forces behind the scenes that make something tick. So on a very basic level, if you think of it in terms of a universe that has many different diverse organisms, they all come down to basic elements. Those elements are made up of molecules. Molecules are in turn made up of atoms, and atoms of subatomic particles, and you can go deeper down. So in essence, everything has an inner force that makes it work, and then there's its outer expression. And this context, when we look at it from that perspective, basically, and that makes it so exciting, everything in life, even things that may seem boring or monotonous or tedious or just regular routine, really have within it, it's brimming with pulsating energy. So even when you walk down the street, even when you have just what they call a regular day, there's nothing regular about anything. It's just that our naked eye cannot see the forces beneath the surface, but everything in life is filled with energy and filled with potential. And as we shall be discussing, wine, of course, is one powerful example of that. So everything in the physical reality really has, we'll call it a spiritual and cosmic, you can call it a spiritual and cosmic counterpart. So the physical, so to speak, has a metaphysical inner force. Sometimes you can use the expression everything has a body and has a soul. When you look at a human being, each one of us, the body is our so-called outside exterior, our surface level, how we identify each other. But when two people meet who know each other, the body is just, okay, you know that person's face, you know that person's body language. But we all know we're made up of a personality. And personalities actually are not that easy to define. Because a personality is not tangible and it's not concrete and it doesn't have, you can't see it. But when you have a personality and the people you know around you have personalities. So we all have something, in other words, that is within, that defines who we really are, and it's not just the external package. The Kabbalists like to call it, in terms of, we call energies and containers. And those energies and containers, or it's called or and keli in Hebrew, is essentially that idea. Just to use a simple example, when you're reading a book, the letters on the page, the words, the paragraphs, that's the body. And the message and the sentiments and the feelings and the ideas conveyed, that's the soul. That's the energy. But you need both in the world that we live. If you, for example, just have ideas and you're not expressing them in any words or phrases, you won't be able to communicate what you're saying. On the other hand, if you only have words, they're hollow without a spirit or soul within them. To use another example to drive the point home, if you just think of a human being, for example, you see someone shedding a tear. So we all know a physical tear is a result of a physiological process that creates tear ducts in your eyes when you feel sad, or for that matter, happy. There's tears of joy. So what exactly is the process? So if you look at somebody, you don't first have tears in your eyes and then you feel sad. First there's a sadness, which is an emotional feeling, and in some way it affects your physiological being that it causes you to cry. So no intelligent person will say first you cry and then you feel sad. It's the other way around. But sadness doesn't have any tangible manifestation. Unless someone cries, you can't know if someone's sad unless they show it or express it in some way. The same thing with the smile on the face. For some reason, when we feel satisfied, even newborn children, the face goes into a certain contortion, which looks like a smile, a pleasant look. That's the physical expression of, so to speak, an inner feeling. And the same is true. This is how the mystics and the Hasidic masters teach us how to look at the world, that whatever you see, it's raining outside, so most of us take an umbrella, a raincoat. If you listen to the weather report, you hear meteorologists explaining the causes of weather patterns, whether it's pressure systems, whether it's high or low pressure systems, or it's the winds, or it's different factors that are causing a different turbulence that causes weather change. But if you go beyond that, why can't you say that rain maybe is a form of cosmic tears that are a energy that's on a cosmic level that manifests in physical rain, just like sadness manifests in physical tears. So we take this type of perspective. Everything in the universe is really has two dimensions. There's a dimension that you see and experience, and has the dimension, what is it reflecting and what is it expressing? So we think in terms of wine, and the way wine is produced from grapes. And it's interesting that even though when you look at a grape and you wouldn't know better, who would figure out that this grape can turn into a drink like that can have such impact on us and on society like I described earlier? But either by accident or in some way, they figured it out, just like they figured out that olives produce oil. But the interesting phenomenon here is that that wine, which is our discussion, and for that matter, oil is the same thing, is fascinating because it is a physical manifestation of showing you that the grape looks like one thing, but it has a force within it that when you squeeze that grape and you extract the juice, and then you ferment it, and all the process of creating wine, you suddenly have a drink that the grape does not make anybody intoxicated. The grape, as delicious as it may be, doesn't have any intoxicating factors, but it has within it unbelievable power that can literally shift our moods, change our disposition, all concealed within a grape. Now, the truth is, if you think about anything, any process, any food, same thing as grain. Who would have imagined these stalks of grain in a field can turn into, after you gather them, you turn them into, you extract the wheat, and that wheat in turn can turn into flour. That flour, when you bake it, mix it with water and mix it with other things, turns into bread. There are few things on earth, for example, water you can drink directly from its source, but many other things, chocolate, from the cocoa bean. The same thing with so many other elements that come from some other state that needs either heating or boiling or breaking down or fermenting, that turns one thing, a metamorphosis from one to another. So the first basic lesson that we learn from wine, and for that matter anything that is like a juice that you extract from a fruit, is that nothing is as it appears. And when we apply that to our personal lives, because remember, from the mystical and point of view, every human being is a small universe. And the universe is a large organism. So anything that exists in the world exists within us. So we also have that same element. We are a fruit that on the surface can appear one thing, but when you squeeze it, it can turn into something completely more potent and powerful. And how much potential do we have? What wine do we produce? On a very basic level, that's its first message and lesson. And this isn't just a metaphorical, poetic way of looking at it. It's actually the reason the universe works that way is because everything that exists, as I said, in the macrocosm exists in the microcosm within each one of us. So that's why the Baal Shem Tov says that when you see something or you hear something, you need to take a lesson for your personal life, because it's really a reflection of you. In addition, if you look in the Torah, there's actually a verse that says, Ki ha'adam eitz hasada. The human being is like the tree in the field. Now, there are many types of trees, and one of them is a grapevine. Not exactly a tree, but it's a vine. So there is the grapevine within us, which is the essential thing that we are like a grape, and with pressure and squeezed and challenged, you can produce a tremendous amount of power. So that's on a very first ostensible level, lesson number one. Now, the truth is, you could say the same thing as I said with the olive. You could say the same thing, frankly, with tea. Tea leaves grow, and again, until someone figured out tea leaves, when you mix it with hot water, created this drink called tea, with its healing agents, with its soothing of elements and everything else that tea brings with it. And as they say, that you don't know how strong a person is. They compare sometimes, they say a woman is like a tea bag. You don't know how strong she is until you put her into hot water. But you could say this about everybody. When you put it into hot water, it produces and elicits from something that seems so innocuous, it elicits something that has such power. So this you can say really about anything that has that potential that can only be released when you squeeze it or when you ferment it or when you break it down. So wine goes in that category, but we're going to talk a little deeper about it. So in the mystical teachings, starting from the Zohar, and then later in the writings of the Arizal, of Isaac Luria, and more length in the Hasidic discourses, especially in a book called Imre Bina from the Mitla, the second Chabad Rebbe, who was the son of Rabbi Shneur Zalman, the author of the Tanya, discusses actually wine in the context of the secrets of wisdom, the secret wisdom. And based on a statement, the Talmud says, Nichnas yayin yotze soid. That when wine enters, the secret is released. On a very basic level, that means when somebody's a little lighthearted and intoxicated, they will reveal secrets that they would not reveal in the regular state of mind. Sometimes in a cynical way, it's said about somebody that's drunk, they say, in Yiddish, they say, was is auf en lung is auf en zung. Or you could say it in English, you could say, what is on his lung is on his tongue. Meaning that which is in his lung and always internal, when he gets drunk, suddenly is on his tongue and he talks. And sometimes people talk too much and talk nonsense or talk whatever it is, but it reveals. Now, for a person who's really a rich personality with a lot of content, wine can also elicit very powerful, positive things, not just the revealing confidential secrets or something of that nature. So sod has also the meaning deeper dimensions. It reveals deeper dimensions. And interestingly, the gematria is the numerical equivalent. So in every Hebrew letter has a number. Aleph is 1, Beis is 2. So when you take a word, there's a number that adds up. What does Yayin add up? Yayin is Yud, Nun. That's 70, 50, 70. What is Sod, secret, is 60. Vav Dal is also 70. They both have the same numerical equivalent called 70. So there's a deeper relationship and when you between the two. And actually when you see a grape, what does a grape do? What does wine do? It reveals the secret of the grape. That way you wouldn't know there was carrying a secret. When wine is produced, you suddenly realize that these grapes, whatever type of grapes, and whether it's a red wine or white wine or other types of wine, is actually the secret of the grape. As I said, you could also discuss this in the context of the olive, but we're focusing on wine, so that's what we're going to focus on. Wine, that's specific. Now, when you drink olive oil, that doesn't happen. You don't start revealing inner dimensions. It's only with wine that happens. Okay. So with that said, so now the Kabbalists explain why is wine that has that power to so-called loosen someone up to the point that they can reveal a deeper dimension. They can feel comfortable, less inhibited. Why is that? Because on a spiritual level, wine, the root of wine and spirituality has that power. Regular drinks, let's say drink water, it quenches thirst, it's necessary for life, but it doesn't necessarily reach deeper in you and bring out something that would have been concealed on its own. So many drinks like that, fruit drinks or others, don't necessarily do that. Wine has that capacity, that alcoholic capacity. Truth is, this is also other alcoholic drinks, but again, we're talking about wine, and I'm speaking specifically because wine is also a sacred drink in the context of Kiddush, let's say. You find that in Jewish tradition, and other religions for that matter as well, wine has a sacred element to it, that every time you do a sacred thing, you always do it on a cup of wine. Kiddush Friday night or Shabbos, marriage is done over a cup of wine, and you'll find that the wine is used in all sacred rituals. So at the time of the temple, there were wine libations, nisuchayayin, on the altar. Now, why is that the case? Because wine symbolizes, in a physical sense, the idea of revealing the unconscious or the superconscious. So just as I said before, we have a body and a soul. Let's talk about the mind. We know we have a conscious and we have a superconscious. I use specifically the word superconscious, not unconscious or subconscious, because in Kabbalistic thought, superconscious precedes consciousness. When you say subconscious, it sounds like a basement, or unconscious. Superconscious is higher than consciousness, not lower than consciousness. So superconscious would be the more accurate type of a translation. So wine has an opening channel between our conscious lives and our superconscious lives. Now, what does this mean? So those familiar with Freudian psychology, so people have become familiar with the idea of the unconscious. But we're going to talk about this preceding Freud, and especially as explained in the Kabbalistic thoughts, and that is a very basic principle that was always known. The outer dimension of our behavior, our conscious lives, our conscious minds, and our conscious hearts are just a surface level of superconscious forces that are at work. Those superconscious forces are invisible and impossible to directly access, but from there comes the conscious experience. One of the ways it's expressed is the difference between land and water. Let's take the difference between land and water. What is the difference between land and water? The ocean. Both have life, but all of the life in the ocean is completely submerged and concealed beneath the water cover. So had we did not have cameras and we didn't have scuba divers, we would never even fathom or imagine there's such complex life that's even more complex than life on Earth. But we know today that it's absolutely brimming with life. Even more, the Talmud says everything that exists on land exists in the sea. It doesn't say everything that exists in the sea exists on land, which means the sea has more species than land does. Today we know that, but it's concealed. And it deludes us into thinking there's nothing much going on there. So water represents, the sea represents the superconscious state. In the words of the Kabbalists, the hidden worlds, Alma Discassia. Land, on the other hand, everything is revealed. The creatures of land walk on its surface, and they're not submerged, they're not concealed. I mean, they can be concealed in a cave or in a burrow or something of that nature, but technically they are in a revealed state. That refers to the conscious being. So we have, so to speak, within us, the sea within us, and we have the land within us. We have both elements. And interestingly, our lives begin actually in the sea. For 9 months, we are submerged in the embryonic fluids, the embryonic waters in our mother's womb. And the Torah says that when the world was created, it was also completely submerged in water. Then when we're born and the umbilical cord is cut, then we become land creatures, where we leave the waters of the embryo and we enter into the earth as independent entities. But the truth is we never really got disconnected from those waters, because that's really what defined us, that's why we so gravitate toward nurturing as newborns and really throughout life. Love and nurturing is the single most important ingredient for a healthy person. To feel loved, to feel respected, to feel nurtured, which is what healthy parents do. So besides the 9 months where the mother completely protects, feeds, and everything the child has is from the mother, even in our early years, a healthy home will provide a nurturing environment. What's a nurturing environment? If you think about it, it's like living in the water. which is what explains why we are so drawn to water and why we feel so comfortable in water. You know, when we go into water, we have that idea, we feel like we're submerging in something, and it has that like refreshing element, a certain feeling. Obviously, I'm talking about in a healthy and safe way. There's something about it, because our souls, originate from those hidden worlds. But we're sent into the world of land in order to function and to accomplish and achieve in this world. And as a matter of fact, the purpose is for us to bridge those two worlds. I don't know if you know this, but Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, the great Moses, his name was not Moses. By his parents, did not give him the name Moses. The Talmud talks about a bunch of names that they gave him, but was not Moses. Where did he get the name Moshe? It's actually an Egyptian name. It was given to him by the daughter of Pharaoh, who found the little baby in a basket at the edge in the river Nile, and because she drew him out of the water, she called him Moshe min hamayim mishisihu, which is extremely really odd. It's almost like an insult to his parents. Why would you call this boy by the name of someone that just took him out of the water for a technical reason, and not the name given to him by his biological parents? So the Kabbalists explain and the Hasidic masters explain, because actually she captured the essence of Moshe. He was a water soul. That was the technical part of this, why he was put in a basket on water. But the truth is, he was a soul that came from water worlds. He was connected to his source, like everything that's submerged in water, the divine source. And that's why his soul came from that at a high level. But God sent Moses to a land world, in order to bring the power and intensity of the water world into the land world. So basically, that's the purpose, is bridging these two worlds, which is why by the parting of the sea, we have one time it was bridged. And you'll see throughout Moses' life, water was always a very dominant thing. He would not strike the river Nile because he was saved by the river Nile. And later, we have the story of Moses hitting the stone and speaking to the stone in order to extract water from it. So water is a very central theme in Moses' life, besides his name. What?
I thought he hit the rock because he was angry.
No. God told him to hit the rock. The second time, God said he should speak to the rock. Instead, he didn't. That's a separate discussion. It's not relevant right here. Bottom line is water. Okay. Because Moshe Rabbeinu represents that idea of submergence. Fish in water don't need, for example, in Jewish law, shechita. You don't need to slaughter fish because they are submerged like in a mikveh of water all the time. They have that type of purity, which is why actually fish is very healthy food. Now, fish in water is the similar idea when someone feels completely submerged and connected. You know, most of us deal with issues like existential loneliness. We feel disconnected. We feel isolated. People who are connected to their source of life and always know what their mission, and they're always focused 24/7, these are called nunayama, fish of the sea. Souls that are like the fish of the sea. They're completely submerged in the purpose of their lives. They never have the dichotomy, the neurosis of a duality in their lives that all of us mostly deal with, because they're completely submerged. But that's a dimension that most of us cannot access. We live in land where there is dichotomies and where there is a split and there is schisms. But the goal is for us to derive and take from that water consciousness and bring it into our so-called land consciousness. So in that sense, we have within ourselves, we have two dimensions. We have, as I said, the outer dimension that is very obvious, the land within us, which is our bodies, our body language, and the things we're conscious of. And then we have our superconscious. That's the waters within our soul that are not obvious, but they are the driving force that shapes who you are. As a matter of fact, as I said, that's the state of being you were in for 9 months and the earliest stages of your life, in your formative years, in order to give us the power that when we go out to a hostile world, where we become separated from our connection to our source and our connection to our purpose, we should have a reminder that you actually are connected, and now you have to reconnect. So it's really reconnecting to something that you're always connected with, which is one of the beautiful concepts in Jewish thought, which is the idea that we are fundamentally connected to something greater than we are, but it's concealed from us. It's concealed. And it's our mission is to extract that. And that's where wine comes in, because that's exactly what wine is. That's why wine intoxicates. That's why wine reveals secrets. What is the ultimate secret wine reveals? The secret of of the superconscious, which is concealed within the conscious. So when you talk to someone, every word they say, everything, their problems, their good things, anything they share, always has beneath the surface something else going on. And in a sense, you can say our purpose in life is to connect the superconscious to the conscious, the land to the water. And that's what wine does. It's exactly what it does. First of all, physically, as I said before, you're taking a grape and it conceals its powers, and through the wine process and the fermentation process and everything that's required to create a good wine, you are revealing its concealed elements. But on a deeper level, wine actually then, when we drink it, reveals a concealed dimension within us. So drinking it in moderation, obviously, and in a sacred way, it has a power that other things don't have. It does not have other drinks in this world don't have that power. The power to reveal within us a deeper dimension. So actually, someone drinking wine in a healthy way, in a moderate way, in a controlled way, regulated way, what would happen is you'd be able to have actually a deeper spiritual experience, which is why wine was always associated with these sacred rituals, as I mentioned before. It's not just you drink a cup of wine. It's because it's part of drawing down and drawing and exposing and revealing something greater than that it was within us. So when we start Shabbos, what's Shabbos? After 6 days of the week, we're involved in our work. What's our work? Our work is the things we do to survive, to make a living, to make ends meet. Someone will say to you, who are you? Anyone that says, I am my job, you know there's a problem. Like I say, who are you? And people give you their business card. That's not who you are, that's what you do. Now you may be completely consumed with your work and maybe what you're doing most of the time, but it's not who you are. Because there was a time before you ever had this job. And there were 9 months in your mother's womb where you have no job at all. And you are a soul that was sent to this earth for a purpose. That's who you are. The fact that you identify with your job means that you've been so-called hijacked. Come Shabbos, and Shabbos is a day where we say, okay, we shut everything down. We shut down our involvements in the material world in order to re-enter our soul space. So what do? You begin by making Kiddush. You take wine, because that's what wine does. Wine is meant to bring that soul, superconscious, spiritual dimension that you are into your tangible reality. That's why we make Kiddush, Shabbos and Yom Tov holidays, and over different times, as I said, by a wedding, and other places where we make on a cup of wine. We will, if when 10 people are eating a meal, they bench the prayer after the meal with a cup of wine. So wine is connected with drawing down a deeper dimension of consciousness, in this case, superconsciousness. And in that sense, it takes on a whole new dimension. It's not just the drink. Remember, it's not just about taking the drink and someone gets a little tipsy or a little intoxicated from it. It's the opposite. Wine is a symbol of really accessing and connecting to a deeper dimension in our own beings. And that's why in Judaism the concept of alcoholism is completely forbidden. Yain v'shecher al teisht, when the children of Aaron, because they drank wine and they entered the Holy of Holies, that was considered a bad, they had good intentions, but it didn't have good results. Wine is only a means. It's a symbol and a means to having a responsible, deeper experience of the spirituality. I just wanted to qualify that. But when it's done in the right way, and in the sacred way, and done in humility, not just wine in order for a person to be able to get rid of their inhibitions so they can become more boisterous or more arrogant or more confident. We're talking about a wine that's used in a humble way. It becomes a symbol and a catalyst for the idea of actually revealing dimensions within ourselves that we cannot reveal on our own. So this brings us to the tremendous lesson in all of this, and that is the lesson essentially of who are we, not just who are we, what are you capable of? Now, when most people answer that question, they can only answer it, and they can only say, I know what I'm capable of based on what I know. How could I know what I'm capable of when I don't know what I don't know? How do you know how deep and how enormous and tremendous resources you have within your potential. No one can make a statement, I don't have that. How do you know? You were never there. You never visited there. So wine is a lesson that teaches us about the powers that we have that we're not aware of. And this is the first step in any challenge that people have. And I've deal with people who have different troubles and real issues, and sometimes not so real. But even the most real challenges, at the end of the day, every challenge is a challenge, but if you discover that you have deeper strengths, then those strengths can counter any challenge. And many of us lose confidence because we think the challenge is so overwhelming, we don't dig deeper. Wine tells us never ever be deceived by what looks on what something looks like on the surface. Because beneath your consciousness lies profound layers and dimensions of superconscious. And it's deeper and deeper than you'll ever know. And as a result, when you know that alone, even if you may not know the extent, that alone creates a certain humility. Don't feel that any challenge in life is overwhelming, because you may have the strength to deal with it. So most people, not that we don't have challenges, but don't have that, they don't have necessarily the confidence, or are not getting the right coaching or the right support that tells them the wine that you have in you has not yet been released. So in a sense, you could almost say that the whole process of producing wine, the fermentation, the time that passes, even the cultivation of where the grapes should grow, can also be a parallel and a reflection of how we can also develop our own selves. Here's not the place to go through that whole process. I'm also not a wine expert in that way, but that deserves its own discussion. As a matter of fact, I believe we have an article on this topic. If anybody wants it, just email us at meaningfullife.com, and we'll be happy to send this article that we did, an essay on the wine process and how it parallels in our own personal lives. But suffice it to say, what it tells us is that you have tremendous resources, that far more than you would ever imagine in your life. And the challenge is to recognize that. So God sent us a gift, the drink called wine. And we are compelled, as I said, it's one of the oldest in history, one of the most popular, one of the most symbolic drinks in our lives and in society, that till this day is plays a prominent role, more than most people even know when you start looking around. Because why is it so compelling? Not because it just has certain features, precisely because it's a reminder to us about the wine within us. It's a reminder to us about the potential that each of us has, the potential of being able to reach a place that is deeper than our conscious, the superconscious potential that we have. And that is a critical element in understanding our own personalities. So to give us a few examples, unfortunately, as I said before, sometimes you need hot water to bring out the best. Crisis, pressure. The diamonds are all a result of pressure. Pearls, a pearl. Natural pearls are produced due to the fact that an oyster secretes a particular type of fluid in order to protect itself, because it has a very, very sensitive underbelly. So when a piece of dust enters into an oyster's insides, it will secrete this fluid in order to create a buffer. And this fluid hardens and becomes pearls. So these beautiful pearls that we are so attracted to are essentially simply it was a anti-irritant of a simple oyster. An oyster didn't want to be uncomfortable. So discomfort creates beauty. And the same is true in everything in life. Even though we all don't want to have undue pressure, and we don't want to definitely not have loss and death and crisis in a traumatic sense of the word, but there is nothing that grows in this world without some form of pressure. They tell us this analogy, but it's true. When a butterfly emerges from the chrysalis, from the cocoon, was once a caterpillar, so it's a process. And how does the process work? After a while, the caterpillar goes into a cocoon, spends time there, and then it metamorphosizes into a beautiful butterfly. Now, when the chrysalis begins to open, the cocoon begins to open, it takes a while. It's like, you ever see like an egg cracking and a chick comes out. It doesn't come out immediately. It slowly cracks, and slowly, the little new chick, or for that matter, any creature that's born from eggs, makes its way through that egg. So someone's watching how the butterfly was struggling because it was at the stage where the cocoon had opened up, but the butterfly couldn't yet make it out, and it was struggling to get out. So he felt so much compassion for the butterfly. What did he do? He took scissors, and cut open the cocoon to let the butterfly free. Nice act, right, of compassion. And then he waits to see how this beautiful butterfly is going to take its first flight. But to his surprise, butterfly doesn't move. Comes out of the cocoon and just sits there. And he pushes it and tries to motivate it, and it never could fly. Why? Because when the butterfly fights to cut open and come out of its cocoon, that pressure forces liquid into its wings that creates the right hydraulics necessary for it to be able to fly. And because he, in his compassion, decided to take away this last challenge for it to force itself out, he cut it open. The butterfly never had that pressure, and the wings never don't have the lift, because they never gained that liquid that would go into those wings because they didn't have that other pressure. Think about that. Next time you're pressured in life, ask yourself, maybe this pressure is actually causing liquid to go into your being, allowing you to fly. Because it's causing you to build up strength. It's like without resistance, no one's going to develop a muscle. It's the resistance when you run, when you walk, when you compete with someone else. That other person is bringing the best out of you because there's a challenge. If someone to say, okay, how strong is your punch? How strong is your push, your thrust? Only when someone pays the resistance and you fight the resistance, that causes you to get stronger. So life presents pressures. And so often we so don't want to be uncomfortable and we don't want pain, we just say, I just want to get rid of it. Now again, I want to qualify. I'm not suggesting undo. We always pray to God that we should have with the chesed. It shouldn't be extreme. But to suggest that we shouldn't have pressure in life. So when you have pressure, whether you like it or not, and even if you were asked to get rid of it, right now you have to see it as an opportunity. This pressure perhaps is coming in order to make you a stronger person. Now I know this sounds like a cliche, and we've heard this.
Yeah. What if you didn't want to become stronger?
Well, you know something? A butterfly. Well, who's asking you? No one's asking you whether you want to become stronger. Because you were sent here for a purpose. It's not about you. Sent to, the butterfly. You could say the butterfly may not want to fly. Fine, that's his prerogative.
But I think the butterfly just.
Did you say the butterfly can't fly because all of a sudden the butterflies asked to fly and they never had to, and all of a sudden it's too much?
No, it never was developed the ability, the liquid that needs to go into its wings for it to be able to develop the right lift for it to fly.
So
could not.
If you learned it earlier, then it could fly.
No, it had to be pressured to do so, and this person cut open. Did you hear what I just said? You didn't hear the story I told, huh?
When it was pressured, how come it couldn't fly?
It wasn't pressured. The person cut it open and let it free. That was the problem.
So it wasn't prepared.
Anyway, you listen to the recording. I said it. The story is basically I don't. We're also live on a broadcast here, so I feel a little uncomfortable to have to repeat the story. But it's basically so pressure in life is actually a necessity. Everybody would love to stay in their mother's womb. Everybody would love to stay in the comforts of certain protection. But what makes us great people is when we go out into a hostile world where we are not always protected and we have to develop resources. That's the facts of life. Just you have to accept that, and that is not even up to us. That will happen. You will grow up and you will be forced to have to leave, as we read in this week's chapter, Lech Lecha, to leave the home of your parents, your birthplace, Artzacha, your land, your birthplace, and the home of your parents. That is the fact. Just like after 9 months, during the 9 months of pregnancy, a child belongs inside his mother's womb. After 9 months, the time is for the fruit has gotten ripe enough to come off the tree. The child has gotten large enough to begin to develop as its own independent entity. This is life. And we have to sometimes just simply realize that you can't fight this. As a matter of fact, this is the way exactly how God wants it to be. And life and struggle are synonymous. This idea that we're going to look for this type of fantasy of a retirement village with no concerns is exactly that. If you should find that, you'll end up being, God forbid, a butterfly that can't fly. Which means that you can't be a butterfly, you just be butter. Maybe put it that way. Okay? Because it is the nature of the human being is to grow in that way. If you think of your heartbeat, can you live without a heartbeat? No. God. Can you live without breathing? No. It's all about contraction, expansion. There's pressure. The heart is under pressure. The pressure in, like a pump. And that is a contraction. Then it expands. You breathe in, you breathe out. There's nothing that is just on a flat line. Everything results from pressure. Now, as I said, we pray that it shouldn't be extra. But pressure and life and growth are all one thing. So when you think of wine, wine is a direct outlet. Why didn't God just create wine and you just go to just like there's a brook of water or a spring of water, there's a place you just go and drink from a brook of wine? Because He wanted to teach us that in order to extract deeper strengths, the sod, the secrets of our own soul, the power of our own potential, it requires a process and pressure, which is essentially what's required. We live in a world today that we deceive ourselves into thinking because you can just go onto Amazon. You press a button, 24/7, you can get anything you want, 24/6. You can get fruits out of the season. So we're convinced that we have this type of sense of entitlement that we have access to everything, so we're all powerful. That's not life. There was a certain beauty when people worked on the fields. They realized the work they have to do to get a loaf of bread. Today, you just go into the thing. A loaf of bread is a result of a whole process. We've lost sight of two key things, and we've become desensitized to two things. One is the process, and second thing is that things emerge. Wine reminds us of that. Things don't happen just because you want it. And they don't happen overnight. A child has to go through 9 months of the pregnancy to give birth, to be born. Then it goes through its own development till it becomes an adult. Things are a process. Think of a flower growing in a garden. Beautiful flower. Can you force a flower out of the garden? Can you go and say, you know what, like with the caterpillar, I'm going to cut open the cocoon, I'm going to pull the flower right out of the ground. You'll destroy the flower if you do that. You water the ground, you nurture, and then what happens? It emerges. And the process, there's a process and there's an emergence. All great things in life need process and emergence. Take away those two things and you don't really have anything great. You have artificial creations. Yes, you can create an artificial thing and press a few buttons and someone can create some type of virtual reality. But that's not real. The real things in life, let's think about love, relationships, enduring relationships, truth, soul. All the things that are really enduring and eternal do not come with, you can't press a button. You can't even purchase it. They emerge through a process. And many people simply don't want to accept that because they say, what do you mean today I can buy anything? I have enough money, I'll buy it all. You can buy everything that is superficial. You can't buy anything that's real. Because love, like anything, is a process. It's a process. Just like a tree and a flower, you do the right things, you nurture, you weed the garden, you uproot the weeds, and then the flowers will emerge. When people say, I love that the person I know does something, the way to do it is to nurture and allow the process to take over. Now, there is a process. Look, we all need education, we all need guidance, and you can't just assume it's just going to happen. But these are key things that all are learned from this lesson of wine, that it's not just there. It takes that effort. And part of that process and emergence is the pressure that I'm describing, the pressure that makes things develop. And that's where beauty comes from. Anything great in this world, guaranteed, look how it got there, and you'll see it came through effort, through pressure, through persistence, and through the process that finally allowed something to emerge. Now, sometimes we're blessed that it happens quicker, and sometimes it takes longer. But don't ever think that your investment in that is worthless. It may take time, but it will emerge. And appreciating that is a key to living a life where you do not always feel, you know what, I'm not getting what I wanted, I'm not getting it fast enough, impatience, frustration, and all the other stuff. It's recognizing that if you do the right things, the process will lead to an emergence. And it's exactly what happens with wine. If you ever saw how wine is made, in the beginning no one has a clue how these grapes are going to turn these beautiful into this delicious wine. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's months and months, if not years, of the process that's necessary. And there's a lot of different steps in the way. And sometimes it doesn't even turn out as good as you want it. But the same is true in our own personal lives. That type of thing. And I find those two words, process and emergence, a critical thing to think about. People talk about relationships. You know, we live in a time, we have an epidemic of single life. People looking to find desperately their soulmate. And there's so many fundamental things that are distorted in our society, including what we see on television and the media, that it teaches us the wrong ways of what to look for in a relationship and how to look for it. A relationship, first and foremost, is not about physical intimacy. It's not just about sexuality and getting your pleasure met. So a relationship is about a commitment of two souls connecting with each other. Because of our instant gratification mode, we have turned relationships often into an action. If it leads to some action, it leads to some type of physical connection, great. If not, I have no patience, I want to move on. When in truth, a relationship is the perfect example of flowers. Two people communicate. Two people bond with each other. They nurture each other, and they build a life together. Slowly will emerge what we call true love. This thing that love, the word love, is so overused, that's completely wrong. People say, you hear people, for example, madly in love with each other. It was love at first sight. 2 years later, they're in divorce court, each one wanting to kill the other. What happened? So they'll say the love died. Or maybe it wasn't love in the first place. Maybe they got the wrong picture of love. Because can love really lead to war? Maybe it wasn't love. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was infatuation. Maybe it was something they wanted at the time. Love is a outgrowth of doing the right things, and then love emerges. Because love is enduring. Is it possible for a healthy parent, for example, to fall out of love with their children? It doesn't exist, unless they're unhealthy. Because love is a natural process that comes when people have the deep connection. We think love is an end. It's not. We think love is a means, rather. That love, people make love. No, you do the right things and love emerges. Like everything in life. Truth. Can you find truth in any store? I know there are many people trying to sell us truth. But you can't find truth. Truth is in here. You have to do the right things and truth emerges. And the same thing with the soul, and the same thing with our superconscious. So we live in a society that we're being fed the myth that you can buy things. That you cannot buy things. You can do things and you're going to gain and acquire that thing. No, it doesn't work that way. It's the process and the pressure, and specifically the humility that comes with the pressure, that allows us to build the strength that's necessary in relationships. Relationships is a process. It's a process of two people getting to know each other, connecting without any particular physical agenda or other things like that, and allowing something to emerge. And that emergence is what's called love. And it's absolutely possible. The problem is we're fed with very, very toxic and very distorted views on relationships and don't have the role models necessary. We live in a society where everything becomes negligible. You know what? The person that you're in love with suddenly becomes a pain, or it's not worth it. You know what? I move on, I'll find somebody else. There isn't that, the idea of a commitment. You work towards something. People tell me all the time, it's not worth it. Not worth working on my marriage. Move on, let's go further. And you say, so what exactly is worth working on? Making money. That's worth it. You understand? That's, for example, the distortion. What do you mean? A relationship and family is nothing more. That's the only thing you're going to leave. Money, it doesn't have to. Money dissipates. Money, you can't take money with you, and money constantly needs to be replenished. The only thing you're going to leave is your relationships and why is that not worth investing in? But that's the world in which we live. We want it easy. So all these are lessons that wine. The wine, when we talk about, you say sometimes people are like wine, like aged wine, vintage, where we're really reflecting on someone that has the life experience, that have become seasoned. That seasoning comes with time, it comes with patience, it comes with effort, it comes with pressure, people who've gone through difficult things in life, And everybody's going to have some difficult challenges, but the difficulties force the liquids into their wings to fly, because that's when you fly, when you have pressure. Take away pressure, and then we remain very mediocre, no one motivating, very comfortable. Try it out. Try a week of being completely comfortable, not feeling any type of pressure. You tell me at the end of the week how much you've accomplished. Yes. Huh? Right. And it's called the thrust. You need to have the pressure, everything. They always need a counterforce to force something to move. That's how it is. You know, for example, you see someone, a sprinter, they lean back in order to thrust forward. A bow and arrow, you pull back in order to shoot further. The more you pull back, the further it will fly. It's always that way. And I told you again with breathing. You want to, for example, you sometimes see people want to muster up strength. They'll breathe in very deeply, right? And then shoot forward. That's the way it is in life. And when we do this in a healthy way, we prevent the undue pressures and unnecessary pains that life can often, unfortunately, bring to us. So the key thing is to remember that wine is a tremendous lesson in life. So next time you take a cup of wine, look at it before you drink it, before you make the blessing, and say, okay, what lessons does this have for me? Before you gulp it down. How did this wine get here? It came through grapes that went through a whole process. And the wine has that type of a revelation of something of the secrets beneath. So what does it mean to me? It means I also have wine. You can produce wine, beautiful wine, delicious wine. But it comes from your superconscious, and you need to reveal it. It comes from the secrets, the sod, as I said, that emerges and gets uncovered when you do the right steps, including the pressure that I was describing before, to reveal. So how much potential wine do you have inside of you? How much potential resources? As I said, none of us know, because we've never seen the superconscious. But rest assured, you have tremendous power, tremendous potential, much more than you can imagine. And when you're around people who are dedicated to that type of approach to life, to look at life and see, okay, here are the challenges, here's how we can grow, that helps you get to a place like that. Unfortunately, many of us gravitate around other people who complain. So we complain, so you have a complaining society, you know, like a complaining, like a complainers club, where CC, is that complainers club? CC. And they're just busy, everyone's validating their other person's complaints, how bad things are, and this is not working, that's not working. That's not what you're looking for in life. You want to be around winners who say, okay, that's a challenge, now let's figure out how to get beyond it, how to get around it. That is the key thing to everything in life, having that type of attitude. Sometimes we need each other, and it's not always easy to do on our own, but we have these lessons, and as I said before, this week's chapter, Lech Lecha, which is essentially leaving your natural comfort zones, your natural subjectivity to reach great heights. That's the essential theme in that sense. Now, you may wonder, why am I talking about wine this week? The truth is, last week's chapter talked about someone who got intoxicated. His name was Noah, after the flood, and it's not considered a positive thing. It was escape for him. And then we actually have a chapter before that, in Bereshis, you actually have one of the opinions of the tree of knowledge, that it was a vine. It was a grape that they ate. And had they waited a few hours, they could have made kiddush on that same vine, and the same grapes, but they didn't. So wine can go, and of course, like anything powerful, can be used for the wrong thing. That's why you find people, I mentioned before, that can get addicted, intoxicated, and numb themselves. And instead of, like they say, some people drink to remember, but some people drink to forget. We're talking about trying to drink to remember, to reveal deeper secrets, not to forget and numb ourselves from reality. But anything powerful can always be used in a negative way. We talked before about the sons of Aaron. And then it's told, Yain v'shecher, you should not drink wine and beer. You should not drink it because it can cause a negative effect. But on a positive sense, in the regulated way, with humility, it has tremendous power. We will also rereading in next week's chapter, Lot also gets drunk, also to his detriment. Also due to after he sees the destruction of Sodom, so him and Noach, they got depressed. And they basically wanted to avoid the pain of life. And that's, of course, drinking the wrong way. That's to numb ourselves. We're talking about dealing with the pain and allowing it to help us grow and reach greater heights. So, my friends, I hope this wine tasting exercise is tantalizing. and will tantalize your taste buds and allow you to experience deeper dimensions of your own inner soul, your inner self, dimensions that are hitherto unknown to you even. And there's deeper and deeper dimensions, and there's nothing more exhilarating to get to know yourself in the real way. So how would you like to get to know yourself? In new ways. So all this is hinted to, and we can derive and glean from the wine discussion, the Kabbalah of wine, the mystery and the secrets of the wine, its mystique, its power, and its intoxicating power even, all to help us grow into a new place and a greater place. So this will be one, we're going to do different, I'll probably do different drinks and different elixirs, how do you pronounce it? Elixir. And other things throughout the year. So this is one part of a series we'll call the wine edition of Meaningful Life's Wednesday night live. And it's been an honor as always, and I hope to be able to recognize and discover within you, be able to see the great potential that you exude, that you bring forth in helping make this world a better place. Please see the Meaningful Life Center and myself as assets in accessing both your conscious and superconscious powers. And with that, we will conclude. Until next Wednesday, everyone have a very blessed and healthy, intoxicating week.